All right, so tonight is about, I wanted to address a little bit about, number one, the stress of the trip and kind of the emotions that are happening during the trip. And then, like, when you get home, some of the behaviors you might see then either continue at home or start happening at home. And then also go over some sensory stuff. So, yeah, we've got people popping up here right and left. Hi, Janet. Hey, Judy.
Hi.
Okay, Judy, are you Judy Westra?
I am.
Okay. So Judy's joining us. Can you guys all see Judy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
And I'm actually going to turn it off because I don't look good.
that's fine. You can turn it off. Just leave me out here hanging by myself. Anyway, Judy has a lot of experience with trauma kids, and so she said, "Can I pop in?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'd love for you to do that." So she actually knows a lot more about dealing with this kind of behavior than I do. So she's going to pop in and add things to the call tonight. So for those of you guys that came on late, I basically said we're going to talk about sensory issues that you can that you might see in your children, and also behaviors that are maybe trauma based. And I can tell you from my experience that every kid that's adopted is going to have some type of trauma based behavior. Very rarely are they going to run into your arms and just be happy and act like, you know, it's the best thing that ever happened to them in the world. The one thing that I have to try to tell people is that this is our dream, but what we're really doing is we're taking our children out of everything they know. And it's very, very traumatic for them, even if they're well prepared. And then you have the kids that aren't well prepared, or who are even told things about the US that are not true. Oh, you're gonna be turned into a slave. They're going to spank you and hit you and abuse you if you don't do everything they say. The kids are scared to death. And you know, I don't know percentages of what kids are lied to, what kids are well prepared, and what kids just simply like just walk into your arms and don't look back. But out of my 8 kids that I've adopted, and 7 out of the 8 are, well, let's just put 1 out of 8 is cognitively disabled. So he has Down syndrome, so he really had no clue what was going on. But for those people, for my kids, I would say that my 2 older kids' adoptions, they were scared to death. And it was an adoption of both of them, but my 14-year-old came first and was by herself for about 5 days with me, and she was really terrified. Matter of fact, I went back and looked at the video of her gotcha day, and her behavior is so weird compared to what I know now. Just like really acting, even her mannerisms and her gestures were just complete, like, I don't know what to do with this. And just looking at the people who brought her, like, help me, you know, I don't understand. I don't know what to do. She didn't know whether to hug me. She didn't know whether to come near me or stay away. I don't think she knew whether to smile or cry. So anyway, and then some of my younger kids, like one of my children was really ill. He had no clue what was going on whatsoever. He just wasn't even healthy enough to even realize that his life was changing so drastically. A couple of my other kids had like some behaviors that were not, you know, they were like a stress reaction. Crying at the door, of course, crying when they gave them to us, but nothing like some of the things I see at gotcha days, like the kicking, screaming, hitting, spitting, you know, just anger and absolute uncontrolled emotions because they have no control over their situation.
And that would be us.
What's that?
This is Judy speaking. That would be us.
Yeah. So anyway, what your child's going to be dealing with, I wanted to start to talk about a little bit about trauma and the basis for why I keep saying that these are kids that are going through trauma. I am a fan of Karen Purvis in the Empower to Connect simulcast that she does. I've been to a conference of hers. I brush up on her videos all the time. I believe she's got 87 videos on her website about kids that are from a hard place, is what she calls them. And so I wrote down the 6 things that she categorizes as children from a hard place. I'm going to just read them off to you because I wrote them down. One is, no, sorry, wrong page. One is a child who was born out of a difficult pregnancy. That could be that the pregnancy was stressful, the pregnancy was unwanted, there wasn't enough food to eat, anything that would have caused the mom stress. Arguments with the partner, arguments with the parents, the family and friends. Number 2 is a difficult birth. Number 3 is premature birth or early hospitalization. Some of our children are coming to us and they were abandoned at days old. If that's not a trauma or a stressor, I don't know what is. And so brain chemistries are being affected by this because they're not being nurtured. And then 4, 5, and 6 are what we normally think about as trauma, which is abuse, neglect, and specific trauma. Seeing a parent die or, something like that, seeing a horrible thing happen. But 3 of those things are actually either before birth or during birth. So I see this a lot. I see this a lot in my grandson. My daughter's a single parent. She was not with the father during the pregnancy. It was extremely stressful. She had a decent labor, but then ended up having a C-section because of stress. So he's like got 2 of those right there. And I see his behaviors. I can see where he needs to have kind of a different kind of parenting. So our kids that are from hard places tend to sit around in the fight or flight mode, just waiting for, things not to go their way and parts of their life to not be able to be controlled. And they go into fight or flight, which a lot of people, they call it dysregulation. When that happens, you can see that they're like uncontrolled emotions, anger, outbursts, physical tantrums. They can last for a really long time, or they can be short-lived. It can look a lot of different ways, but we need to think about how we're going to handle it because our kids are from hard places. Every adopted kid is, whether it's that they're adopted at 2 days old, 2 months old, or 20 years. So anyway, Karen Purvis says that brain chemistry, brain function, sensory, all of these things are formed between the year or the 9 months of pregnancy and the first year of life. And many, many, many of our kids are at a great disadvantage during this time period of their life. So it is completely, it's completely right to think that we might have some behavioral issues during the first, say, I don't know, months or even a couple of years into our adoptions, even farther for some. So the one thing I wanted to tell you, I actually am on a web group called Parenting with Connection, which is based on Karen Purvis's Connections, the trust-based parenting. And one person said, make everything about developing a relationship, not about correction. Only correct when it's safety related, like running out into a street or something like that. They're always in fight or flight, and they're not correctable when they are in fight or flight. So if they shut down or if they act out, either way, they're going to be so chemically challenged in their brain that they are really not going to be correctable at that point in time.
And can I jump in a minute, Kelly? This is Judy.
Let me turn you up, Judy, because I just can't hear you.
Okay.
And we can't see her. Is that normal?
Yeah, she's got herself turned on because she doesn't want to be seen.
Oh, okay.
I'm wearing my bathrobe. I'm sorry.
Hey, I got out of my bathrobe.
I'm in my GMA shirt.
That's right. Next week, you can have a glass of wine with us. Bathrobes and wine. Okay. Let me get my speakers up.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, do it. Yep.
Okay. What I was going to say is that in that moment when they are reacting, when they are fighting, kicking, hitting, screaming, biting, it is really hard to parent for relationship. It feels personal.
Mm-hmm.
And it is not personal. It's absolutely not personal. It's very much about, it's fighting for their lives. In many cases, it truly is. They feel that they are fighting for their lives.
Yep. Yep. And I mean, you think about what you would do if you were reacting that way. You would just do anything and everything to try to get out of that situation. Um, I wanted to talk about, one thing that Karen Purvis was talking about was she was talking about how kids, during that first year of life, they don't have real memories of what happened to them or the hunger that they felt or the loneliness or whatever that part of their um, first year was not nurtured. However, they can have moments where they think that they might be hungry or that they think they're lonely. Like, I recall this. They don't have a distinct memory, but they certainly have a sense of it, is what she says. So even though you get your child very, very young, sometimes the chemistry has changed in their brain and they don't have distinct memories, but they have a sensation of it. They have a recollection in their brain of this part of trauma in their life. So I wanted to talk about like in China and then coming home. A lot of people know about cocooning or keeping the world small is what I like to say. You have to think about the fact that you're going to get a little person in your life, or maybe even a big person in your life, and they have never been taught what a parent is. They have never had one person in their life, for the most part, one person in their life that's going to love them unconditionally, that is going to do everything in the best interest for them, and that they can trust for their needs, for their basic needs to be met. Some kids, I know one of my sons, he doesn't walk. So he was a kid that was easy to stick in a corner and leave there all day. And he was 4 years old when we got him, and he was still sucking out of a bottle and eating everything out of a bottle. They had cut off the end of the nipple so that the nipple was very large, but he was still getting rice and things like that, but only from a bottle. So he did not know how to bite. He did not know how to chew. And I will tell you this, he was in one of the best private foster homes that had the best reputation in China. And they kept him alive, but they didn't teach him things. And I'm grateful, I am grateful for them and I support them and I understand it. But I think it goes to show a lot about the fact that everyone that's taking care of your child, whether they are a foster family or whether they are a hired nanny, it is their job. And there are very, very few of them that love like you will. And so your child has to learn that you're going to take care of them and learn that you're the mama. You are the one, and a mama to them, a lot of the IEs are called mama. So you have to make sure they know that you as a mommy are very different than what they've experienced in their life. So there's a lot of teaching going on as far as mama, with the feeding, the care, the kissing the boo-boos, the hugs at night. Routine is really, really important to the kids. As when you get them back to that hotel, you start developing a routine for them and try to keep their schedule regimented. That's what they are used to, and that is a comfort zone for them. They may be bouncing off the wall. They may be overstimulated with sensory issues. Some of these kids haven't been outside of a crib, or if they were outside of the crib, they were in a walker and they were only in a room. I remember one of my kids playing with the water faucet for over an hour, just turning on the water, turning off the water, turning on, turning off. Light switches are a big deal. They've never, they don't use light switches. They've maybe never had a chance to turn a light switch on. Opening and closing the refrigerator in your hotel room, turning on and off the TV, the radio, what have you. It's all very, very brand new to them. And you will see a lot of undesirable behaviors come out when they are overstimulated. So not only does keeping their world small help them rely more on you because you're the person that they're seeing the most, but it's also keeping the stimulation down for them.
Kelly, can I jump in? When you have a minute, can I jump in again?
Go.
One of the things that a lot of parents are uncomfortable with, you mentioned undesirable behaviors, and I'd like to quantify some of what we saw in our two children.
Yep.
We saw, as Kelly mentioned, total fascination with light switches, water faucets, opening refrigerator door, whatever closed out the world and attracted their attention, but also things like picking your nose or, self-stimulation, that kind of stuff. That is all very common. It does not, it's not uncommon, and it's what they're used to. It's what they've used to self-soothe. It's okay.
Right. Yeah. I remember when I brought my youngest daughter home, she was a head rocker. She would rock her head, and it was only at night when she was falling asleep. A lot of it happened when she was in the car seat and she was ready to fall asleep. She would rock her head, and it goes away. It does go away. Sometimes it takes months to go away, though, because they're just used to it. It's just a habit. It makes them feel good. Some kids, will like rub a bald spot in their head. You can see all kinds of different behaviors to soothe themselves. I mean, basically, it's a soothing technique. As we would see kids in the U.S. maybe suck a pacifier or suck their thumb, these kids have developed other ways to soothe themselves. So anyway, back to like the cocooning stuff. It is important to keep them the stimulation low. You're going to be able to have an instinct of whether your kid is handling what's going on around them well or not. And the first thing that you should think if they're having a meltdown is there too much stimulation? Have we gone to the grocery store we shouldn't have? Do we have the radio on, the TV on, and somebody screaming in the next room? It could be a visual, it could be auditory, it could be touch. Some kids come home and they just really have never felt a stuffed animal or seen a baby doll, and it freaks them out. I saw a post the other day on Facebook. This one lady, she's like, my kid just screams her head off when she sees a Barbie doll. For some reason, that is just a stimulus that she does not like. It could be the eyes looking at her. It could be the feeling of the hair. It's hard to pinpoint. So some people, some kids just, they don't want to have any sensory. They just can't. And then other kids are seeking it continually. They want to talk to you all the time. They want to touch you. They want to lick things. They're smelling. My son asked me to smell my hair. He smells my hair every day. This is the one that was sat in the corner for 4 years of his life. So and it was funny because I read this graphic on Facebook the other day, and one of them was, does your kid smell you? And I was like, oh, the light went on. It's like, that's Jack Steele. He's a sensory seeker. So smelling hair is something. Total off-the-wall things that we would not think about. I did run across a really great website this afternoon when I was kind of thinking about what I was going to talk about. And there's a huge list. It's called a sensory calming quick list. And it's not a quick list. I printed it out. It's 5 pages long. But it talks about the different kind of sensory, vestibular sense, proprioceptive sense, the oral motor sense, the calming spaces, and the motor planning. So I am going to tell you this website. I wrote it down, and so it is, of course, www, and then it's developmental-delay.com. And there was the list was really long of the different types of things that they would talk about. This one was / the word page, PAGE, period, E as in cat, F as in family, M as in mom, another / and the number 260. So that's the whole thing. If you get to the developmental-delay.com, just go down to the sensory area, sensory processing, and you're probably going to be able to get there. But lots of different things that you can do. Like for instance, my kids love a trampoline. The trampoline makes them go up and down. It bounces them hard. It gives them pressure on their feet. Some of the kids do flips, and then that's a great vestibular sense because it's the spatial awareness around them. Great calmer. Even if you can get a little jumpy that's just like 3 feet around that your child can sit and jump on indoors, it's great. Very good for them. So the sensory things are things that I would just really highly recommend that you read about. Because the sensory and the trauma and the behaviors are kind of all wrapped into a nice, not so neat ball with our children. And I don't do these to I don't do these to scare you guys, but I just really, really want to be very honest with what can happen and what does happen sometimes in your adoption. Okay, Judy's got her hand up. Let's go, Judy.
I just wanted to say that another good resource for sensory is the Out of Sync Child and the Out of Sync Child Has Fun. The Out of Sync Child Has Fun is phenomenal. It's just got based on the issues that you see as far as wanting more touch, wanting less touch, vestibular, whatever. It's got page after page after page of activities, most of them low cost. And a lot of them are truly fun. I mean, it's stuff like playing with shaving cream, or swinging on a swing or balancing on a teeter-totter, that kind of stuff that you can work into your normal everyday activities.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of the kids, like for instance, some of the kids that are sensory seekers, just giving them a really hard squeeze and really just like a deep pressure for a little while, it just releases all kinds of chemicals in their from their brain that is calming to them. The serotonin is released and things like that. So this is a great tool. It's a great weapon. And even for our homegrown kids, some of our homegrown kids are kids from hard places because they've been sick when they were little and they were in the hospital, or stressful pregnancies, what have you. So like I said, my grandson is a perfect example of a kid from a hard place. So I do a lot of the stuff with him. He's on the trampoline every day at my house. I'm his daycare provider. And my daughter cuts hair, so a lot of times he's here late at night, and I send all the kids out to the trampoline. It's been the best $400 I've ever spent. Just really, really good. So talking about coming home and maybe like the meeting at the airport, that could be a real trigger for your child if you have a great big group of people waiting for you at the airport. If your child is having difficulty with his behavior, her behavior in China, that might be a great way for you to head off people, or a great reason to head off people at the airport and just say, look, we just can't handle this. You don't even have to say it's the child. Just say, we are exhausted. We appreciate that you guys want to come out, but at this point, we're going to have a welcome home party later on or something like that. You really do have to, as I say, wear your big girl panties sometimes, dealing with friends and family that are going to want to get into your personal space when you might not want them there, or when your child can't handle them. Going to church, you might go to church, but you might not put your child in Sunday school or in the daycare or the nursery. You might just keep them close to you and say, this is what we do. Let them see where mommy and daddy are going to be the whole time and get comfortable with that situation first. Go to, if you have to go to the grocery store and you need to take your children with you, go at a time when there's not going to be a lot of people there. 5 o'clock, when people are getting off work and the lines are 4 kids long or 4 people long, you don't want to stand there with your child while they're having a meltdown because, you didn't get them the Hershey bar that they wanted. So anyway, that's kind of it. I just really want to make sure that everybody knows that this is just not rainbows and unicorns. You really, really have to be intentional about your parenting, intentional about siblings, and introducing the child back into another social situation. Like if you're just the 2 parents in China, and then you come home and all the siblings need to meet the child, can be very, very overwhelming for both, for the siblings that are home already and for the children who are being brought into the family new. And also keep a really good eye on your children who might already be in your family through adoption, and then you bring another child in through adoption. Sometimes that triggers their bad memories, or triggers just things that it wasn't a happy time for them. It was a time of being out of control and not knowing what was going on, being lonely or scared. A lot of people see that their kids, for one reason or another, on anniversaries of gotcha days, they don't have a good day, because some of these kids, their whole world was turned upside down, and they their brain chemistry realizes that that was the day. I know it sounds weird, but it does happen. I've heard a lot of people that they just don't have a good time on those family days when they're trying to celebrate. Their kids just can't handle it. So, Judy, do you have anything else you want to add? The floor is completely open to you if you want to address anything else you can think of that might be helpful.
I guess the only question I have is, would it be helpful for people if I shared a little bit about our Gotcha Day with our kids or the first couple of weeks home? We adopted a girl, 4 years, 8 months old, and she's been home just over 9 years now. And we adopted our son just short of, he turned 5, 11 days after the plane landed, actually. And he's been home, will be 6 years in July. So I was wondering if it would be helpful if I just kind of shared.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, we've got some people shaking their heads. Yes. Thank you.
So my daughter has been home 9 years. When Kelly said that you don't know what the preparation is, she is the classic case. She, as best we can determine, she was woken up that morning and said, "Oh, good, you got a new mommy and daddy, and we're taking you to them." And 8 hours later, she met us. She was herded onto a bus and met us 8 hours later. And to be honest, we did not handle the initial meeting well. At that time, we were one of the first adopters of a special need kid. The program was such a new program that at that point, really nobody knew what to call it. And so there really wasn't a whole lot of preparation for anybody to meet a kid that was not an infant. And so we made the mistake of, we saw our daughter in the hallway, and we made the mistake of, I walked up to her and kind of touched her, because it was like, I knew it was her. And the nannies had been trained that once I made contact, or once one of us made contact, they were to hand her to us and walk away. And that's what they did. They're in the middle of the hallway of CCCWA. To say that it was a traumatic meeting is an understatement. There are still 9 years later pictures of that day that I cannot look at without crying. We are probably the only people in the history of civil affairs that have ever walked out of civil affairs without a child and without signing the necessary paperwork. That's how bad she was tantruming. The tantrum pretty much continued for the next 5 days. And when I say, I mean, anything would cause her to cry, and, about the only happy pictures I have of that first 5 days was I had fortunately brought along a package of hair, of ponytail holders and cutesy barrettes and stuff like that. And we've got a couple of pictures of her putting those in because that was just the coolest thing ever. So she's got like 27 little ponytails on her head. The morning of the 5th day, she kind of woke up and was like, okay, well, I'm stuck with you now, so I may as well make the best of it. And we did not have a time at that time. It was common for people to go to Beijing in the beginning. And because it was Chinese New Year, our agency was like, you're not going to Beijing. So they sent us to Hainan Island, which was Chinese Hawaii, which actually turned out to be the best thing for us because we were in a 5-star resort. They flew us down there. We were in a 5-star resort on a family vacation where there was no guide, there was nothing, all we could do for 3 days was basically eat, sleep, and play on the beach. And that's what we did. It was a hotel staffed for 2,000, and we were one of 20 families there. So honestly, going out and for both of our kids, going out and sightseeing, everybody's got this grand idea, we're going to China, we've got to see all this stuff. And it's not about you. It's not a vacation. It's about the kid.
Yeah.
And honestly, with both children, that time of kind of cocooning in China, where the only trips that we took were outside to the playground or outside to the park, that was the best thing. You know, we did very little sightseeing for either one of them um, after we had our gotcha days. We did very little sightseeing that was not, you know, to White Cloud Mountain or another park in the province or whatever. Um, and honestly, even that was too much. So my daughter, you know, when we got home, she was anxiously attached. Obviously, you know, she'd basically been kidnapped from everything she knew. She was anxiously attached for at least 18 months. And when I mean anxiously attached, it was the 2-year-old behavior where I could not go into the bathroom and shut the door without her having a 45-minute meltdown. You know, I could not leave the room without her having a 45-minute meltdown. Um, um, 3 years later, oh, and she was developmentally a 2-year-old. So we spent an awful lot of time that first year really, you know, working on the basics, working on the stuff you would do with a 2-year-old, you know, throwing a ball, climbing, going up and down steps. We spent tons of hours and hours at the playground. And I remember writing a blog post that was basically, you know, here I thought all this attachment work was going to be, you know, my vision was it was going to be this serious time that we set aside every day and we focused on attachment. And it wasn't. It was the 10,000 hours we spent at the playground. You know, it was all the time we spent at the playground, all the time we spent doing all that stuff you do with a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and all the times that we went, you know, all the times that I said she came home very food insecure, and it was all those times that I said to her, yeah, we only have half a box of cereal here, but look, you know, I've got 3 more boxes up here of Ting Ting's favorite cereal, you know. So it was all of that, yes, mommy can meet your needs. With my son, oh, and my daughter had not been in foster care, but she had been in what amounted to a very loving extended family. She was in an orphanage where the nannies had all raised their children, and they'd all raised boys, and they were all long-term people that were there, and they were working there specifically because they wanted to raise little girls. And so we lucked out. Hold on just a minute. I gotta say goodnight. Okay, so we really lucked out with her in that she knew, you know, she may not have had a mommy, but she did know, you know, to some extent what it meant to be cared for. When we met my son, as best we can determine, he was also almost 5 years old. As best we can determine, he was in foster care for some period of time, but he also had multiple caregivers and some that were quite less than desirable. And when we met him, I mean, you know, we were both conscious of we're not going to make the same mistakes again. And again, we met him in the hall, but it was a completely different reaction. He was like, okay, I got this, you know, bye. And it wasn't until probably 3 days later, I mean, he was, you know, he kept kind of phasing out, and what I realized now was really, you know, really kind of reaction to trauma. It was really just pure absolute terror, but, you know, he'd been told if he cried, then we were going to send him back. So he did what any little, yeah. And that's not uncommon. I mean, kids are told all the time, if you misbehave, if you cry, you're going to be sent back. They're going to beat you. They're going to do whatever. You know, don't cry. Don't, you know, don't show emotion. You know, don't misbehave. And, you know, these kids are 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, whatever age they are. And, that's an awful lot of pressure to put on a 5-year-old.
Yeah.
So, he'd been told, don't cry. And it took 3 days, and we were standing in the middle of a park in Jilin, China, which has not seen many Westerners. And it finally dawned on him that he was stuck with us. And in the middle of a bridge in China, in a crowded park, he started yelling, "Help me, these people are kidnapping me," in Mandarin.
Oh my God.
And we had no idea what he was saying until the people around us started reacting angrily.
Wow.
So, and then after that, it was pure hell for the next 18 months. It was kicking, screaming, biting, hitting, spitting, multiple times per day. He was diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder like symptoms. They can't diagnose a child under 8 years old. And we are the lucky ones. We'd done enough. Our agency had forced us before we adopted my daughter, because they had had a very public and very nasty disruption, and they didn't want another one. And they thought, because we were first-time parents, they forced us to go to an attachment therapist before we adopted our first daughter. And that training, Kelly mentioned Parenting with Connection and Karen Purvis's work. That training kind of really saw us through that first 3 years with my son. And, it really is. It's when a kid is kicking and screaming and biting, and I mean, literally, we had to drag him onto a plane in Jilin to Guangzhou. We had to drag him onto a plane from Guangzhou to Detroit, and at one point he took off screaming that these people, that we were out to kill him. That's kind of the worst that it can get.
But it's pure terror, because he doesn't know.
It's pure terror. It's pure terror. And it's really hard when you're in the middle of it not to think, I remember I was running through the airport in Guangzhou, and I remember thinking, why the heck am I running? I could just let him go and get on the plane and we'd all be good. You're not thinking, you're not thinking
Out too.
You're freaked out too. You're running through this airport where people do not speak, don't speak your language. You're on pure adrenaline, and all of that. And I mean, I literally remember thinking, we could just let him go and it would be okay. Obviously we didn't, but it's really hard when you're in the middle of all of that, not to react, not to hit back, not to, and what saved me was probably about 6 months in. I'd had enough. One night at bedtime, I'd had enough, where I'd been bitten and kicked and hit, to the point where I was on the verge of tears. And if I didn't leave the room, I was gonna, it was gonna be a bad thing. And I walked out to get myself composed, and I went back in. He didn't hear me come back in, and I saw him huddled in the corner of his bed in just pure terror. And that was the point where it was like, okay, yeah, this isn't about me. It's, I could see that it wasn't about me. It was about him. And it was about, that he was fighting for his life, and if you can kind of keep that in mind. I mean, today the kid, when I went on mute to say goodnight, that was the kid that 6 years ago was kicking, hitting, and biting me every night at bedtime. He came in for a big goodnight hug. So that's kind of, we're kind of the success story.
It's awesome.
So
it's awesome. Well, and the healing can take place, but sometimes it takes years. And I just, I want to go back and just really say again that this is not every case, but it's always very good to know that these things can happen. So many times, we get up in the morning and, I'm a big Facebook group person because I want to pour into families and help them to know that these things happen. And, you know, we wake up and we see there's another disruption or dissolution or something's not going right in China. Write down my phone number and call me if you are in China and you need help. My website is up. My phone number's all over at ladybugsandlove.com. I don't care if you wake me up in the middle of the night. I will talk you off the ledge. I have done it many, many times. And all you need to do is say, look, I just want to talk to somebody, talk this out. I want to know if this is normal. I have also been in a situation where I happened to be able to go and visit my daughter that we adopted from Xi'an. She was from an orphanage far from Xi'an, but I happened to be in Xi'an as I was visiting her. I was not adopting her at that point. I'd gotten special permission to take her a walker. And so I flew over, took her the walker, and my friend Angela was with me. And at that point, there was another family who had just been given their daughter with cleft lip, cleft palate, and she was obviously like a failure to thrive baby, and she wasn't home in there. And really, they knew right away that this child was not going to be, much more than somebody that they had to take care of for the rest of her life, and probably wouldn't function at more than a toddler age maybe. And they did not bring her home. And it's a very, very, very touchy situation. But the last thing that I want to see happen is for someone to go to China and have to make a decision like this when they haven't been educated enough to make it. When they see their child shutting down and not eating for 3 or 4 days, and really not knowing that this is just a reaction to trauma. Seeing a kid that has, the autistic-like behaviors, the rocking and different soothing behaviors, and thinking, they're autistic, they're never going to be anything. We're not going to do this. I want you guys to be educated and be able to be in that stressed situation where you are exhausted from jet lag and you are meeting this little person that you're going to have in your life for the rest of the time, and you don't know a thing about them, and they're screaming and crying. So just like what's normal and what could happen, but not always what happens. I've had great gotcha days or family days, and my children have walked out of that adoption civil affairs office and never looked back. They just, I can see tidbits of adoption trauma through their lives. But I mean, I look for it. I really do look for it because I know it's there. But the actual adoption process, the in-country and then coming home and all was not stressful, and it was wonderful like I thought it was going to be. So, there are both sides to the coin, but you need to be educated and be able to know what could happen, but pray for what you want to happen. So, okay. Did you lower your hand or raise your hand?
I just wanted to reiterate the not making any snap judgments in China. You can't diagnose RAD after 2 weeks. You can't diagnose autism based on a traumatized child that's rocking in a corner, or, you can't even diagnose good attachment based on a child that is smiling, because when they landed in the US, they may, it may all change. China is not real time.
Yeah.
It really is not real time. Nothing, it's wonderful, it's amazing, it's crazy and miraculous and everything else, but it's not real time.
Yeah. It is. A lot of people, we just say try to survive. Don't try to be expecting certain behaviors. Just try to pacify everyone to the point where you can get through your day, because it is very stressful. And you may find that I've had both situations happen where, like, one of my children, he didn't want to stay in the room at all because it took all the Chinese people away, and he was stuck with the Americans. And then I had other kids that they didn't want to go out. So you have to be very flexible in trying to decide what is best for you. And this also brings up the topic of going by yourself, because I really feel very strongly that everyone should have a travel buddy, even if it's a 12, 13, 14-year-old sibling, a sister to you, the parent, another adult that can help you. If you get sick, if you are just exhausted and you need to take an hour to walk outside the room and gather yourself, it's just so much better. And I just feel horrible for people who announce, I have nobody to go with me, and I just think, oh my gosh, this is just not ideal. So anyway, like I said, take my phone number. I'm going to tell you right now what it is, and that way you have it right next to you. It's 410-596-8250. That is a cell phone that lays next to my bed at night. It's the alarm that wakes me up in the morning, so it's always on. And I will answer it, especially if I see a number that has more than the normal 10-digit area code and stuff. I also am on WeChat, and WeChat is a really, really good app to download and have at your disposal. It can be almost used like a telephone. You can talk into it with your voice and say your message, and then the other person can listen to it. So it's almost like you're talking to them, but you're not, and it's free. It's a great app to have to get back to your family as well. You don't have to see somebody's face to know that they just, they need that cyber hug, or they just want to cry to you. It's completely normal. So that being said, anybody have any questions? It can be about what we're talking about. It can just be something that's come up in your paperwork. Whatever, just ask away. I'm here. I'm not asleep yet, so I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Just unmute.
This is Gabby.
Hey, Gabby.
I have a question. So it's funny how you guys mentioned keep to a schedule, because I remember when I was 20, my younger brother was born, and my mom would drill into our heads when we watched him, keep him on the schedule, keep him on the schedule. Mm-hmm. But when you get home and you only typically have, I think I'll have probably 8 weeks of leave, maternity leave, and then you go back to work.
Right. Yep. Well, and then you develop a new schedule. And I mean, something that I would say is there any way that you can go back to work maybe half days first and then go back full days?
Right. And I'm lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm lucky. I work from home, so I do have that flexibility, which is huge, but we're considering more of a preschooler. Mm-hmm. So then the next thought is, well, how quickly do you put them into school?
Right.
My suggestion, because we adopted preschoolers too, my suggestion there is that you have a plan, and then you have a backup plan, and then you have a backup plan for the backup plan.
Okay.
So I had our intent, came home in February. Our intent was that, we do some mommy and me type stuff in the beginning, and then, she would go to school, go into preschool, or, sometime just just to get her around other kids over the summer with me with her. It was really truly 8 months before she was ready to go without me. And then I'm convinced that the only reason she did was because it was with a friend of mine that she already knew was a teacher.
Okay.
And she went into her class. So it was just being with Mrs. H and her 12 little friends. Mm-hmm. My other child, was the same age, and literally after 4 weeks, I mean, it was clear that he needed to go to some kind of structured program with other kids. Okay. So you really have to be flexible,
right.
Because you have to keep an eye on it and see if it's working, and if it's not working, can you get in-home childcare,
Sure.
And the other thing I would recommend is that if you do have to go to some kind of preschool, that you find one that will let you do a lot of visits ahead of time, with you there, or will let you volunteer a couple of days a week so that you can assess it. Like with my son, we originally put him in a school And the teacher kept telling me, oh, he's fine, he's fine, he's fine. Well, the first time I volunteered, I'm like, he's licking the stapler. That's not fine,
Right. Sure.
So, and that was regression. That was sensory overload. He just wasn't ready for it. So we pulled back and put him in a much smaller environment, where he could get the social skills he need, could get around other kids and have the structure that one parent, one child really couldn't provide the kind of structure that a preschool program can.
Right. So then I read something so I don't know, and please forgive me. I've got these thoughts in my head. I'm trying to figure out. So I read somewhere that you don't want to do a nanny, because then the child could attach to the nanny and not to the mom. Is that true?
It is true.
Okay.
Yes. It is true. You the more care you can provide, the more, and by care, that means feeding,
Mm-hmm.
diaper changes, clothing changes, loving nighttime care, all of that, but then again, you got to do what you got to do. Right.
Right.
So, just work really, really hard. If you have to go back to work, work really, really hard on attachment,
Okay.
when you're with them, focus really hard on caregiving. And I'm sure Kelly probably has better insight into this than me, because I don't have the latest resources, but there are some guidelines for, there is a lot of information about letters you can give to your teacher, to the teacher, whatever, about, things to look for, things to care for, and all of that. But, as long as you focus on, I'm mommy and this is your teacher,
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that feeds you. I'm the one that, kisses the boo-boos and
Mm-hmm.
I've delegated this person because I have to go to work. It can
Right.
work, it can work,
Great. Thank you.
Gabby, I'll try to get some of the posts that I've seen, not only on giving to your teacher, but also to friends, so that they can realize what's going on. Because a lot of times, oh my goodness, you've got this cute little Asian baby and they just want to smush it,
Oh yeah, I've seen those. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you don't want them coming anywhere near you with your child for the first
No.
while. No holding or anything. And sometimes you have to use the defensive devices of putting them in a baby carrier, so they can't get to them if they're strapped on you. Or just simply, sending out the letter saying, this is what's going to happen. We are bringing this child into our home, and we are going to love him like a biological child, but this child is not biological, and there are other issues at hand here, and this is how we're going to handle them. And grandparents might get offended, friends might get offended, but you really got to put your foot down, because the first 6 months is,
It's crucial.
It is.
It is
crucial. And you're going to really have to step up to the plate and be very intentional on your parenting and how you use your time.
And I think you said you're adopting a 4-year-old or 5.
Or
we're for a 4 or 5-year-old.
Yep.
Okay.
So they're old enough to know what's happening.
Right.
They are and they aren't. They
Right.
all there is some really good preparation right now, but how much can a 4-year-old understand? I mean, it's like you saying, we're going to Disney World in 3 weeks. Well, if the kid's never been to Disney World, what do they know?
Right.
If they've never seen a movie of Disney World, so what? It's kind of that. If they don't have an understanding of what a forever mommy is, or what a mommy is, or what a family is,
Right.
they really can't. And plus, a 4-year-old really doesn't kind of understand time.
Mm-mm.
So, you say forever, and that forever is next week, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, my kids cycle through. They still cycle through. My daughter's been home for 10 years, and she still every so often cycles through about, well, what would it have been like if I had been in China? And,
Hmm.
Yeah.
why
Do you remember?
My daughter does not. My daughter has some language delays, which language is tied to memory.
Okay.
And so she does not have memories of China. My son did for a long, long time. And if you do adopt a child that is older, you know, that is speaking, I would really encourage you to record, you know, use your iPhone to record as many of what he says or what she says as possible, because
Okay.
those memories are priceless. And even if you can't translate it now, you know, record what they're saying, because there will come a time, you know, maybe 3 years from now, where your child's going to say, you know, what was it like in China? And,
Right.
you know, and a lot of those memories do not survive,
In their mind.
they
Right.
don't survive language transition. Memory is tied to language. And so they don't survive. You know, it takes 3 to 6 years to speak fluent English. And the language really doesn't survive. You know, the memories really don't survive that very much. So it's very nice, you know, in my daughter's case, we have very little that we can tell her, except that what we've managed to ask the orphanage to tell us about her time there. You know, my son, we have a little bit more, because he was able to, you know, he became quite fluent, and he shared just volumes of stuff, you know, and we accept everything that they say. I mean, if they say they had pink ponies there, well, okay, you know. Who am I to say that they didn't have pink ponies there?
Exactly.
You know.
Great. Thank you so much.
Lisa, do you have a question?
Well, I felt the need to like chime in because so many things that Judy was saying resonated with us. One thing I wanted to say about when we brought home Joseph, who was 5.5 at the time of adoption, that was in 2014, and about schedule. So I was so like, okay, this is going to be our schedule. And I put him in the car to go to the library for a story time, and he flipped out. And I could not figure out, you know, and I had to just take a step back and realize, like, what am I doing? Like, this is a little boy who has been in a building for 5 years. Like, and now all of a sudden I'm trying to throw him in a car to go here and there and everywhere. And it traumatized him, you know. So I wanted to mention that for our son Joseph, cocooning was a very big deal. Then all of a sudden I realized, okay, time to, you know. So I think a lot of it's so individual, like you were saying, based on the child. For him, because he was older, he needed that safety net. He just needed to be at home. He didn't need a lot of, you know, entertainment. He just needed to be at home.
Right.
And we now, and our gotcha experience with him was beautiful. And we came home, and the first, you know, I want to say the first 2 months were really hard. And then it was like all of a sudden we were over this little hump. And things have gotten better, but even now we are a year and a half in, and we still I was like, oh, tonight even, like I had a traumatized kid in the corner that he just over some little trigger that it is an ongoing process. It's not bad. It's just we constantly as moms have to keep ourselves in check with grace and with patience, and because it's so difficult sometimes, and it's just always trying to figure out what it is and to keep that balance, and you know, for all the kids, like you said, for, you know, all the families. So we are going back to adopt another 5.5-year-old child. So this has been good tonight to remind me of all the, you know, the possibilities that might occur. I'm thankful that my husband is now going with me, because I agree with you. I was scared at the idea of having to go alone. So we'll figure out a way to make it happen so that the two of us can go.
That's good.
One of the statistics, you reminded me of something, Lisa. One of the statistics I heard very early on is that it really takes the amount of time your child spent in China, it really takes that amount of time for them to kind of settle down and believe that they're 100% yours forever.
I believe it.
And we really saw that with both kids. It was like when they came around to about the 5th anniversary, it really sort of clicked with them that, oh yeah, you know, I've now spent more time here than I have in China, and I guess you're it.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know,
encouraged
so-
by that. Thank you, because Joseph knows how much we love him, but he continues to test those boundaries. So I'm thankful to hear, like, that I believe he'll get past it. But he loves to just test that out to make sure we're still going to love him, and that means like pushing every possible button to make sure that we're still going to love him.
And I even tell, especially my son who needs to hear it constantly. I even say, when I'm mad at him, I'm like, yeah, okay, you did this, but I still love you and you're still mine. And,
Right.
I'm still going to be, I'm still going to be your mother when you're an old man,
And I think
suck
too,
it up and deal with it.
yeah, and they have trouble. I know in Joseph's case, he had a lot of nannies. I'm like,
Right.
I said, I'm not this mean person that's just trying to control you. I'm your mommy. I love you. Like it is my job to take the best care of you that I can.
Mhm.
And sometimes that might not equal what you want or what you like, but it's my job to love you the best that I can. And that's the way, it has to be.
Right. Yep. And I think, hey, Heather, I think too that we have to trust our mom's instinct or the Holy Spirit guiding us and telling us what to do. I really feel like a lot of times we just know in our heart what to do with a certain situation. Sometimes it takes us talking it through with somebody else to really have that confirmation that this is the right move. But in a lot of situations, you have to trust your mother's instinct and go with it. There is no manual, and it's hard stuff. And have your safety net in place before you go. Have people you can call to help you. Have freezer meals lined up, and just really be prepared for it to be hard. Pray about it, and just use your instinct. That's the best thing, and educate yourself before you go. So
Can I ask a quick question?
you bet, go for it.
So we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old boy, and we're bringing home another 2-year-old boy this summer. And the two are our biological kids, and we're going to get our little guy. And do you have any advice or experience in dealing with that transition with siblings? Our 4-year-old already has like jealousy issues. Like, I want to sit on mommy's lap if Jeremiah is sitting on mommy's lap. He's all excited about our new little Josiah coming, but I'm afraid like once he gets here, it's just going to be another, oh, well, I want mommy's attention. And
Yeah, and it will be.
Will be likely.
Yep, exactly. It definitely will be like that. And what you have to do is just really try to talk it out with your older child and say, look, this is what's going to happen. We're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about how it's going to feel to you. Sometimes you're going to be sad, and just really talk to him like a little adult and try to really tell him, Josiah is scared. He doesn't know what's going on. So sometimes I'm going to have him on my lap, but I want you to sit next to me and you can help me. Taking that helper role for siblings sometimes gives them that entitlement and that little bit of responsibility that makes them feel like they're worthy of their position in the family. And so, just think of things that you can do. Spend some time one-on-one with him. But yeah, it's going to be hard. It's, I don't know if you have ever heard of the mobile hanging above the crib and somebody bats it. And that's what it feels like when you bring a new child into your family, whether by birth or adoption. And it swings and swings. And as the days go by and the weeks go by, it's going to get a little bit smoother and a little bit smoother. And it's stationary again. So you've got your work cut out for you.
Because I've already got two. If one's being held, the other one wants to be held. So now the 2-year-old's going to have to bring in another 2-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I've got a friend. She's got 3 kids, and they're like 4, 3, and 1. And I see her someday. She's got a baby on the front, a baby on the back, and one is holding her hand. And that's how she does it. That they know their spots, and that's where they go. Little girls on the back, little boys on the front, and oldest is holding the hand. And make time for them. Try to be really intentional about the quality of time that you spend with your kids, and maybe make a new routine with your oldest child. Like, say, this is what we're going to do for bedtime now. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to make up a story about you, and then start telling him stories. They call them social stories in school.
Yeah.
and start telling him stories about, the big brother came and he helped with the baby and, all that, and just try to use your imagination to empower him to feel like he's not losing his spot in the family. And I honestly think, I'm going to say that I honestly think the baby's going to have more trouble than the 4-year-old. Even though the 4-year-old can verbalize it, it's kind of hard to lose your spot as the baby. But I mean, I've got kids. I had, my little guys were all adopted right in a row. And I had at one point a 4-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 2-year-old. So, and at any given point, they're like 6 months apart. So they can be 4, 3, 2, 1, or they can be 4, 4, and 2, 2. So, and they're really tight. It'll work out. It will. Just, get out of the house when you need to get out of the house. Don't feel guilty when you lose your temper or you lose your patience. You have to live a life that has a lot of grace in it when you're a mommy, no matter what.
Every day's a new day.
Yep.
With new chances.
Yep. Yeah. And lean on your friends. If you don't have girlfriends you can talk to, lean on your internet friends and say, look, I really blew it today and I'm just looking for some support here. So yeah, I mean, I know with us just having a large family, we're very isolated. And the girls and the ladies that I talk to during the day, they're my outlet. My husband will say, well, what's going on in the Facebook world today, and there's always something, and it could be that I'm having an issue or somebody else is, but it feels like, wow, we're traveling this journey together, and it's just really, really good to support each other.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else have any questions? All right. Okay, well, we'll try to be back here again next week. I don't know if you guys have subscribed. I know a lot of you guys did, but I try to send that shout out either Sunday night or Monday morning to try to let you know what is happening for the evening. My daughter is coming in town this following week. They're going to Rwanda for 2 years. So she and her husband are coming to stay with us for 10 days before they leave out of Dulles Airport. So there's a good chance we might not have it next Monday night. I know I've got a ladies ministry meeting until 8, so I might bump it over a night or so. So just, stay tuned, and I'll send that shout out. So if you subscribed on the website, that's the only thing I'm going to use that for. I'm never going to spam you. I'm just going to let you know if there's a Zoom call or not. So just stay tuned, and I do try to post in the CHI Waiting Children group, the China Adoption group, and then there's a DTC group that I got put on by somebody, and I've been posting there. So, and you can always private message me on Facebook, or I gave you my phone number, you can text me. So,
Quick question, Kelly, the WeChat thing, because our agency wanted us to put that on there anyway.
Yep.
Do I put in your phone number for that, or is there something?
I just have a username. Let me see. I'm gonna get this here.
I just want to interrupt real quick, Kelly. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And I gotta go. So
Go
if
ahead,
anybody
you
would
take-
like to, thank you for letting me participate.
Oh,
And if
yeah,
anybody has any questions for me, then you can private message me on Facebook.
Yep.
Okay.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, so WeChat, my name is just Kelly Rumbaugh on there.
Okay.
Yep, just all together.
Yep, got it. Thank you.
So it has some kind of QR code thing that you can scan too, but I don't really know what that's all about.
Yeah, I don't know that either. Okay.
But anyway, all right, girlies, it is time for bed.
Thank you.
See you next week.
Good night.
Bye.